My name is Marissa Blackwood, 28 years old. People often tell me I'm too kind, as if kindness were some fatal flaw. I never thought much of it until I realized how easily kindness can be mistaken for weakness, especially by the man you love. That morning, I was making breakfast in my apartment, the one Glenn and I had shared for a year and a half. The smell of coffee filled the air when he suddenly said, "You know what your problem is, Marissa. You're too nice." I laughed softly, and that's a problem because he leaned back in his chair, phone in hand. Nice people always lose. You let everyone walk all over you, like your boss. She dumps extra work on you and you just smile and stay late. I get overtime pay and good reviews, I replied calmly. Glenn rolled his eyes. Exactly. You rationalize being a pushover. In the real world, the ruthless ones win. The people who take what they want. I'd rather earn what I get than steal credit for things I didn't do. God, you sound hopeless, he muttered. This is why people like Clara get ahead. She's bold. She doesn't care what people think. She just acts. I froze for half a second. Clara, his co-worker, the one whose name had started showing up in his conversations more often than mine. Clara said this. Clara told me that. Clara just got promoted. I'd smiled through each mention, but every repetition felt like another thread unraveling inside me. I'm happy for her, I said evenly. You should be taking notes. She knows how to play the game. You just exist. I placed a plate in front of him. I didn't know existing peacefully was such a crime. He didn't answer. His focus drifted back to his phone. I saw the flicker of his thumb double-tapping a photo Clara again. Another gym selfie. I didn't say a word. That moment, something inside me settled. Not anger, not heartbreak, just quiet awareness. He didn't respect me, not because I was unworthy of respect, but because he was incapable of seeing strength in softness. After breakfast, he left for work without a goodbye. I cleaned the table, sat alone, and stared at the empty chair across from me. For 3 years, I'd believed love was about understanding each other's differences, but maybe it only works if both people value those differences. That night, Glenn came home late. He said his team had an after-hours brainstorming session, but the scent of expensive perfume clung to his jacket. It wasn't mine. I didn't accuse him. Instead, I asked simple things. How was work? Long, he said, removing his shoes. Clara had this great idea for the campaign. We stayed back to fine-tune it. Just the two of you. He gave me that half smile that always felt like mockery. It's work, Marissa. Don't be paranoid. I nodded, pretending to believe him. There was no point fighting for attention. He had already redirected elsewhere. 2 days later, I overheard him talking to his brother Liam on speakerphone while he was in the shower. Honestly, she's too soft, Glenn said. I can't keep carrying someone who doesn't fight for anything. Clara says being gentle is just another word for being weak. Liam laughed. Then why stay? Glenn's voice dropped. Because she's comfortable, and because she'll never leave me. I stood outside the bathroom door, my heart steady, my breath calm. I'd heard enough to know the truth he'd mistaken my patience for permanence. That night, when he got out of the shower, he found me sitting by the window, laptop open, working on a project due next week. He kissed my cheek absently. You work too hard, he said, as if the irony was lost on him. Someone has to, I murmured. He didn't ask what I meant. The next week, his tone toward me changed completely. Every conversation became a test. If I disagreed, I was too sensitive. If I stayed quiet, I was cold. If I helped him, he accused me of hovering. If I didn't, I was selfish. I began to realize that nothing I did could please him anymore because he didn't want to be pleased. He wanted control. And when he couldn't dominate me through anger, he tried to chip away at me through disdain. One evening, he came home glowing, tossing his keys on the counter. Guess what? Clara's team might be opening a new position. She thinks I'd be perfect for it. Better hours, bigger paycheck. She even said she'd mentor me for the role. That's great, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. You don't sound excited. I'm happy for you, I said quietly. He scoffed. You say that like it's an obligation, not support. I set my notebook aside. Support isn't blind encouragement. It's making sure you don't lose yourself trying to impress someone else. He stared at me for a long moment, then smiled in that condescending way again. You'll never understand ambition, Marissa. You're content being small. I wanted to remind him that being kind didn't mean being small, but I didn't. I'd learned that arguing with someone who confuses empathy for weakness only makes them more certain they're right. That night, after he fell asleep, I unlocked his phone. Not because I wanted to invade his privacy, but because deep down I already knew what I'd find. The messages weren't explicit. Not yet. But they were intimate in ways that counted. Couldn't stop thinking about your idea today. You inspire me. You looked amazing in that blue shirt. Every line written like a confession disguised as workplace praise. I closed the phone, returned it to the nightstand, and stared at the ceiling until morning. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I simply made a note. Sometimes silence is not submission, it's strategy. When he woke up, he looked at me oblivious. You're quiet today. Just tired, I said. Too much kindness, I guess. He laughed, thinking it was a joke. But in my mind, I'd already started a list. Not of what he'd done wrong, but of what I would never allow again. That morning, I told myself something I'd never said before. If kindness can't survive in a relationship, then maybe it's not me who needs to change. 2 weeks later, things would escalate far beyond anything I'd imagined. But on that morning, with my coffee growing cold and his laughter echoing from the next room, I simply smiled to myself and thought, let him believe I'm too nice to fight back. That's how people like him lose quietly and without even realizing it. 2 weeks passed, and things between Glenn and me grew strangely quiet. He was distant, almost calculating the kind of silence that comes before a storm, not after it. He started staying later at work. Team dinners, he said. Strategy nights. He always made sure to emphasize team, as if preemptively defending himself. One evening, I came home early from my own office, planning to surprise him with dinner. The apartment was empty, but his laptop bag was still on the couch. His phone lit up on the table, Clara. Just got the wine. See you soon. I stood there for a long time, staring at the message, the words blurring slightly. Not because I was shocked I wasn't, but because part of me felt almost relieved. Confirmation is a strange kind of peace. When he finally came home, it was past midnight. He reeked of perfume and confidence. How was the team dinner? I asked, my voice steady. He smiled, loosening his tie. Productive. Clara and I finalized the new pitch. Just the two of you? His eyes flicked toward me, sharp and defensive. You don't trust me now. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. You're making that face, the quiet, judgmental one, until I let out a small breath. Maybe I'm just tired. He scoffed and walked away, muttering something about how I never understood ambition. That night, while he showered, I sat at the table with my laptop and started tracking things, not obsessively, just neatly. Credit card statements, restaurant names, dates that didn't match the ones he claimed to be working late. It wasn't anger driving me, it was precision. A calm woman doesn't scream when betrayed, she documents. The following afternoon, I overheard him on FaceTime with his brother Liam. He hadn't noticed I was home yet. I swear, Liam, she just lets people walk over her. Even her landlord asks her to fix things herself, and she does it. Who does that? She's too nice for her own good. Liam laughed. Sounds exhausting. Glenn smirked. It is. Clara says kindness is just cowardice with better PR. They both laughed loud and careless. When I stepped into the room, Glenn froze mid-laugh. Oh, you're home early, apparently, I said softly. He recovered quickly. We were just joking. I heard. He shrugged. Maybe you'll finally get it. There it was again, that tone, the slow erosion of respect disguised as humor. Later that week, he told me he was going to another team dinner. I simply smiled. Have fun. But instead of sitting home waiting, I started doing something I hadn't done in months, focusing on myself. I stayed late at work, took on a project my manager had been hesitant to assign me. The first night I walked home after 9, I realized something. The silence of the empty apartment didn't hurt anymore. It felt peaceful. 3 nights later, he came home late again. Same perfume, same smug expression. I was already in bed reading. Why are you still up? He asked. I couldn't sleep. You should try melatonin. Stress makes you dramatic. He said it like a joke, but the words were deliberate. They always were. He climbed into bed beside me, scrolling through his phone. I turned away and stared at the wall. I didn't ask where he'd been. I didn't ask who he was texting. He noticed. You're quiet again, he said. I guess I'm just tired of hearing how much better everyone else is than me. He sighed. It's not that. I just wish you had more drive. More edge. And you think I can learn that from Clara? He froze for a moment, then smirked. You're jealous. I'm observant. Same thing. No, I said quietly. One of them is blind. He laughed, rolled over, and went to sleep. 2 days later, I noticed something odd on the credit card statement, a charge at Rosewood Hotel, the same night he'd said he was having a team dinner. When I asked about it, he didn't hesitate. Oh, that Clara's team hosted a small post-event celebration. She got the company to book a suite for brainstorming. A suite? Yeah, for privacy. Big clients were there. Which ones? He hesitated for just half a second before saying, You wouldn't know them. I smiled. Probably not. That was when he relaxed, thinking I'd dropped it. But I hadn't. I saved every bill, every receipt, every inconsistency. I didn't plan revenge. I planned clarity. The following Friday, he came home glowing again. Good news. Clara says she might have a position opening in her department. Better pay, better hours. She's been mentoring me all week. Mentoring, I repeated softly. Yes, she says I need to project more authority if I want to be respected, that I can't let people drag me down. People like me. He hesitated. You said it, not me. I looked at him for a long moment, then said, You really believe she respects you? Of course she does. She sees potential. She sees a mirror. I said, Ambition without integrity looks like potential to the right kind of person. He rolled his eyes. Here we go. Another lecture from St. Marissa about morals and patience. You'll die being nice and poor. I smiled faintly. And you'll live being loud and lost. That was the first time I saw something flicker in his eyes' uncertainty. The brief recognition that maybe he'd gone too far, but it passed quickly like guilt he couldn't afford to feel. The next evening he went shopping. He came back with armfuls of designer bags, suits, watches, cologne shoes. What's all this? I asked. He grinned. Clara says image is everything. You dress for the life you want, not the one you have. How much did you spend? About $1,800. I used the emergency card, the one I gave you. He shrugged. My career is an emergency. You'll thank me when I'm making double. I stared at him speechless for a moment. You used the card I trusted you with for shopping. Don't start. It's an investment. You didn't even ask, because you'd have said no. You're too careful. A real partner would support this. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay level. You're right. I'm careful. That's why you've never missed rent, utilities, or groceries in 3 years. He smirked. And that's why I handle the future. You handle the dishes. That night, while he slept, I stared at him and realized something that changed everything. He wasn't cruel because he was strong. He was cruel because he was weak, terrified that one day I'd stop being the cushion under his ego. And for the first time, I stopped feeling sorry for him. The next morning, I poured him coffee and smiled as usual. But inside, a decision had already been made. If kindness was the language he couldn't understand, I'd show him what fluency in silence looks like. 3 days later, Glenn woke up early, humming to himself as he scrolled through emails. He looked like a man rehearsing victory before the game had even begun. Over breakfast, he said casually, I've been thinking we should move. Move, I asked, stirring my coffee. Yeah. Clara said living in a high-rise changes your mindset. The energy's different. I found this place, 2-bedroom, great view, rooftop pool, concierge service. I looked up. How much? $4,200 a month. I almost laughed. That's triple what we pay now. He leaned forward, all charm and calculation. You can afford it. I saw your savings account last month. You've got plenty sitting there. My spoon paused midair. When did you see my savings? He shrugged like it was nothing. You left your laptop open. Relax, it's not a big deal. I just think it's time to invest in our future. You've been too comfortable, Marissa. It's holding us both back. I stared at him for a long moment. So you want to use my savings to move into a place that matches your career ambitions? Our career ambitions, he corrected smoothly. Clara said a successful image attracts success. You can't stay small forever. I smiled faintly. You're right. Maybe it is time for a move. His eyes lit up. See, I knew you'd understand. I didn't tell him I meant a different kind of move. That afternoon, while he was at work, I called the bank and reported the emergency credit card stolen. Yes, I said politely. There have been some unusual charges recently. The agent asked if I'd like a replacement. No, thank you, I replied. Please close the account after this investigation. Then I called Mrs. Johnson, my landlord, a kind elderly woman whose late husband had built the apartments decades ago. Marissa. How are you, dear? She asked. I'm fine, Mrs. Johnson. I just wanted to confirm something about the lease. Yes, it's only under my name, right? Glenn's not listed. That's right, she said warmly. You've been my best tenant in 5 years. Always on time with rent, always polite. Relief softened my voice. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. That means a lot. She paused. You sound serious, dear. Everything okay? I hesitated. It will be. That evening, Glenn came home confident as ever. But something in me had changed. I felt no fear, no resentment, just calm. He opened the fridge, grabbed a beer, and said, Clara thinks I should get a new car too. Something that looks like success. Maybe a Tesla. You already have a car, I said. Yeah, but it's small. You can't show up to a corporate event in a sedan and expect people to take you seriously. Clara drives a sedan, I reminded him. He waved it off. She's a woman. It's different. I smiled slightly. Of course. He sat down, opened his beer, and looked at me. You're not even mad, are you? Most girlfriends would have flipped out over the spending. You're just numb. Would it make you feel better if I yelled? I asked softly. He stared at me. I don't know. Maybe. At least that would mean you care. I met his eyes. I stopped confusing caring with tolerating. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I smiled faintly. Just thinking out loud. The next day, his power moves started unraveling. I received a call from the bank confirming the cancellation of the card. I thanked them politely and went on with my day. That evening, he came home furious, slamming the door behind him. My card got declined at dinner, he shouted. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was? I looked up from my laptop. The emergency card. Yes, the emergency card you gave me. Oh, that, I said lightly. Yeah, it was compromised. Lots of weird charges. The bank's investigating. He blinked, thrown off by my calm tone. Compromised. Those were my charges. $200 dinners are emergencies. It was a networking dinner with Clara and the team. Just you and Clara, I corrected. The receipt says table for two. His face paled slightly. You've been spying on me. No, I said evenly. Just paying attention. Something a pushover might do. His voice trembled with indignation. This is financial abuse. You can't just cut me off from money. It wasn't your money, I replied. It was a card for emergencies. The kind that actually involved danger, not dinner reservations. He clenched his fists. You're unbelievable. You've shown your true colors. I have, I said quietly. I didn't realize they'd be so inconvenient for you. An hour later, I got a text from him. Staying at Liam's tonight. You need to calm down. I didn't respond. Instead, I began packing his things. Not dramatically, not out of rage, but neatly shirts, folded suits, pressed everything boxed with care. Every item that was his went into labeled cartons. Every item he'd bought with my money went into a separate box labeled pending reimbursement. When I finished, I sat on the couch and took a deep breath. The silence in the apartment didn't feel like absence anymore. It felt like freedom forming. The next morning, he texted again. You really think this is over? I replied simply, I think it's about to be. That night, he returned visibly calmer, or pretending to be. He looked around the apartment at the boxes stacked by the door. What's this? He asked. Your belongings. He laughed, the sound hollow. You're kicking me out. That's hilarious. I'm not kicking you out. I'm ending an arrangement. Marissa, don't be ridiculous. You can't just... You're not on the lease. You've been here as my guest. That arrangement is over. He crossed his arms, forcing a smile. You'd throw me out over a credit card. Not the card, I said quietly. The contempt, the lies, the dinners with Clara while pretending to work late, the belief that kindness is weakness. He scoffed. You're acting like some kind of martyr. I'm acting like someone who finally understands that patience doesn't mean staying silent forever. He smirked. You can't just erase me, Marissa. Watch me. He stared at me, unblinking, the mask slipping for the first time. His voice softened, almost pleading. You're really doing this? I nodded once. Yes. Then I handed him an envelope. You have two options. Take this $2,000 enough for a new place or stay and go through formal eviction. But you won't like what that looks like on your record. He blinked. This is extortion. No, I said calmly. This is business. Something Clara would understand. His phone buzzed. He looked down, Clara calling. He declined the call. You should answer, I said. Might be about your promotion. Shut up, he snapped. It rang again. This time he answered, stepping into the corner. His voice dropped. Not now. I can't. No, he won't. Just stop, Clara. Please. When he hung up, his face was pale. You've ruined everything. I tilted my head slightly. Sounds like you were never in control of it. He stood there, breathing hard, eyes darting between the boxes and me. For the first time, he looked small, not because I'd diminished him, but because he'd built his whole confidence on my silence. You'll regret this, he said finally. Maybe, I replied softly, but at least I'll regret it from a peaceful home. He grabbed the envelope, muttered something under his breath, and stormed out. When the door closed, I whispered to myself, nice doesn't mean naive. It means knowing when gentleness is wasted. And that night, for the first time in years, I slept without checking if the other side of the bed was empty. Glenn was gone for 3 days. The apartment felt strange at first, too quiet, too still, but not empty, just corrected. He'd text occasionally, short bursts of ego trying to resurrect control. "You're being childish. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back." I didn't reply. Silence has a way of sounding louder than words when you give it time. On the fourth night, a different tone appeared. "We need to talk like adults," I answered. "Sure, 7 p.m. He showed up at 6:30, always early when he wanted to look composed. But when he stepped inside and saw the boxes stacked neatly by the door, his face fell. "What's this?" he asked, voice sharp but shaking. "Your things," I said. "Figured you'd want them ready." "I told you I'm not moving out." "I know what you told me. I'm telling you the opposite. You can't just decide that, Marissa. I've lived here for almost 2 years. That makes this my home, too." "Not legally," I said, handing him a copy of the lease. "It's all under my name. You've been a guest." He threw the paper onto the counter. "You're seriously doing this over a credit card?" I met his eyes. Over a pattern. The lies, the disrespect, the gaslighting, the dinners that weren't dinners, and the woman who isn't just your mentor. Glenn's laugh came out brittle. "You're paranoid. Clara and I never—" "Don't bother finishing that," I interrupted. "I'm not asking." He exhaled sharply. "You're unbelievable. You think you're strong now, huh? Acting all cold because you canceled a card." "No," I said calmly. "I think I'm strong because I stopped explaining myself to people who twist every word I say." He sat down on the couch, the same one he'd once called ours. "So what's your plan? Just throw me out." "I'm offering you an exit," I said, sliding an envelope toward him. $2,000 if you're out by Sunday." His jaw dropped. "You're paying me to leave. I'm compensating you for the inconvenience of moving. Or we can do it formally, eviction, legal notice, court process. But you won't like the record that leaves behind." He stared at me stunned. "This is blackmail." "This," I said softly, "is me setting boundaries." For a long time, he said nothing. Then his phone lit up on the table, Clara calling. He stared at it frozen, then declined the call. "You should answer," I said. "Might be about your promotion." "Shut up," he muttered. A minute later, the phone rang again. This time he answered and turned away, lowering his voice. "No, not now. I said not now. He won't." "No, she just stopped, Clara. You're making it worse." When he hung up, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. "You've ruined everything," he said. "No," I corrected gently. "You did. I just stopped pretending not to see it." He clenched his fists. "Clara says if I can't handle my personal life, I'm not ready for the position." I tilted my head. "Sounds like she's being assertive. All those qualities you admire." "Don't mock me," he snapped. "I'm not," I said simply. "I'm just observing." He sank into silence, staring at the floor, jaw tight. I could almost see the gears turning, the realization that the game he thought he'd been winning was already over. He looked up finally. "You really won't give me another chance." "Glenn," I said quietly, "this isn't punishment, it's consequence. You spent months confusing cruelty for strength and mistaking silence for weakness. You taught me how to stop forgiving that." He gave a small, humorless laugh. "So this is your revenge?" "No, revenge is loud. This is peace." He pushed the envelope across the table, refusing to touch it. "Keep your money. I'm not taking handouts." "Suit yourself," I said. "But I'll be changing the locks Monday morning." His nostrils flared. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said softly, "but I'll do it without you." He left in a storm of slammed doors and broken pride. I thought that would be the end of it. But the universe has a dark sense of humor. Endings rarely come clean. The next morning, I woke to a dozen messages. "You can't treat people like this. Everyone thinks you're heartless. Clara says you're spreading lies about us." I scrolled through them, each one more desperate than the last. By noon, the tone had shifted again. "You'll see what happens when you mess with ambitious people." Then silence. 2 days later, the silence broke, but not from Glenn. A notification popped up on my phone. Instagram at Glenad Mills posted a new story. I shouldn't have opened it, but I did. A photo of his boxed-up belongings captioned, "When kindness turns to cruelty." Some people only pretend to care until you threaten their control. The comments came quickly, his friends cheering him on, Clara's little heart emoji, a few mutual acquaintances adding, "You deserve better." I smiled not out of malice, but recognition. He was rewriting the story before I'd even told mine. But I didn't respond. People like Glenn don't understand silence. It terrifies them because it can't be manipulated. That night he texted again, "You win. I'm moving out tomorrow. I'll take the cash offer." I left the envelope by the door. The next day he returned with Liam and 2 friends to help move. They arrived loud, defensive, ready for a scene. Liam glared at me. "You should be ashamed, Marissa. 3 years together and you throw him out like garbage." I stayed calm. He's leaving with all his belongings and $2,000. I'd call that closure, not cruelty. One of the friends spoke up. "He said you controlled his finances. That's abuse, you know." "By canceling my own credit card," I asked. Interesting definition. The second friend frowned. You isolated him from his opportunities. Which ones, I asked. The ones at hotels during his team dinners. Silence. Even Glenn couldn't meet my eyes. They packed quickly after that. Every time he tried to take something that wasn't his, my coffee maker, my TV, I had receipts ready. I bought this, he said, holding up the blender. Really, I asked, showing him the invoice on my phone, dated a year before we met. It was tedious, almost comedic, watching him test how much of the old Marissa remained. The one who would have caved just to keep the peace. But that woman was gone. When the door finally shut behind them, the air in the apartment felt light, like the end of a long-held breath. I sat on the couch, looked around, and whispered to myself, nice doesn't mean powerless. It means patient. And patience runs out too. I didn't know it yet, but Glenn's downfall was just beginning. It took exactly 3 hours after Glenn left for the first ripple to reach me. My phone buzzed relentlessly. Notifications, tags, whispers, disguised as sympathy. I didn't need to look to know what it was. When someone like Glenn loses control, their next move is always the same: rewrite the story. On Instagram, his post had multiplied into a full campaign. When someone you love turns cold overnight, you realize they were never kind, just fake. Manipulation is the new kindness. Freedom feels good. Each one came with a perfectly filtered selfie. The same charm that once disarmed me was now being weaponized for pity. And of course, Clara commented on every post, you deserve peace. Growth is painful, but necessary. I didn't react. Not online, not through friends, not through whispers. Because I'd already learned the most valuable lesson: silence exposes liars faster than confrontation ever could. 3 days later, the campaign escalated. A new caption appeared. When your partner uses money to control you, that's financial abuse. Hundreds of likes. Comments full of moral outrage. His friends called me toxic, manipulative, cold-hearted. I ignored every one of them. Until I got a message from an unknown number. Unknown, this is Clara. I'm sorry for what happened. Glenn's been emotional. He just needs time to process things. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed one word back. Me process. Clara, he's saying you cut him off financially and threw him out with nowhere to go. I just think you could show a bit of empathy. Me, he got $2,000 and a lesson in boundaries. That's plenty of empathy. She didn't reply. A week passed. I went back to work, focusing on my projects, trying to let life settle. But the world has a funny way of returning what you give it multiplied. One afternoon, my co-worker Mia stopped by my desk. Hey, have you seen this? She asked, lowering her voice. Clara and Glenn. They're official. Official. She turned her phone toward me. Clara had posted a photo of herself and Glenn at a rooftop bar, his arm around her, captioned, Ambition recognizes ambition. Mia grimaced. Guess the mentor-student thing got promoted too. I smiled faintly. Guess so. I could have felt angry, but all I felt was clarity. The man who called my kindness weakness was now parading his betrayal like an achievement in public, with a woman who believed the same lie he did, that empathy is the opposite of strength. But life has its own way of rebalancing equations. 2 weeks later, Glenn called. Hey, he said, voice cautious. I think we should clear the air. There's nothing left to clear. Marissa, come on. We were together for 3 years. You can't just erase that. I didn't erase anything I said. You did that when you started performing loyalty for an audience. He sighed. You're impossible. You always think you're above everything. No, I said softly. I just stopped living below my self-respect. He went silent for a moment. Then bitterly, Clara said, you'd react like this. I'm sure she did. She sounds very experienced with consequences. Don't twist things, he snapped. I don't have to, I said. They twist themselves. 2 days later, I received another message, this time from a mutual acquaintance, Nate. Hey, Marissa. Not sure if you've heard, but Clara's husband just filed for divorce. Apparently she and Glenn got caught at some conference. It's a mess. I read the message twice, then closed my phone. No reaction, no satisfaction. Just quiet inevitability. By the end of the week, I learned that Clara had been demoted for unprofessional conduct and Glenn's new job offer had mysteriously disappeared. Their perfect image cracked in public, exactly the thing they feared most. A few nights later, I got another text. Glenn, you think you won, huh? Me, I didn't play. Glenn, she's blaming me for everything. Says I pressured her. Me, sounds like you found your mirror. Glenn, you ruined my life. Me. No, Glenn. You handed it to me, and I set it down. You ruined it all by yourself. He didn't reply again. Weeks passed. My peace came back slowly, piece by piece. The apartment no longer felt haunted. I changed the curtains, rearranged the furniture, and slept with both windows open. Then one night, another text appeared from an unknown number. Unknown. This is Clara's husband. She's saying you threatened her. She claims you have photos of them together. Me, no photos. Just receipts. Unknown. She's lying to save herself. Can we meet? I'll pay you to explain it to my lawyer. Me, I'm not interested. Handle your marriage. Unknown. Please. She's saying you were blackmailing them. Me. The only thing I ever took from them was peace, and I earned it. I blocked the number. By the next month, everything had gone quiet. Until one morning, I was at the cafe near my office when I overheard two women talking at the next table. Remember that guy who dated Clara once said? The one who thought he was some kind of genius at manipulation? Yeah, the other replied. Didn't he lose his job and his girlfriend in the same week? Worse, Clara's husband exposed everything to HR. He had receipts, the kind of meticulous documentation you only see from people who got burned before. The other woman laughed. Guess he finally met someone who doesn't think kindness is weakness. I smiled into my coffee. Not because I was glad he was suffering, but because life had delivered the same lesson I'd tried to teach, just with a louder voice. Glenn thought cruelty made him powerful. Clara thought manipulation made her untouchable. But both forgot one simple truth. People who mistake patience for passivity always underestimate what quiet people do when they've had enough. I didn't destroy them. They simply collapsed under the weight of their own arrogance. And as for me, I didn't need revenge. I had peace. The kind that comes from knowing you were right to stay kind even when it